Come on out to Brown Mountain Bottle Works at 115 East Union Street in Morganton, North Carolina, the place to be for great craft beer. Browse their shelves with hundreds of craft beer selections. Relax and enjoy one of their 12 draft taps. Check them out on the Untapped app for their current draft beer selections and go to their website to see the latest beer offerings and events at www.brownmountainbottleworks.com. We'll see you there.
Barley, often called the heart of beer, is one of the key ingredients in craft beer, along with water, yeast, and hops. Grain contributes more to flavor, aroma, color, and texture more than any of the other ingredients. But can you grow them in your own backyard and you're all set to brew? If it were only that easy. It has to go through 3 important steps first, and that's done at a malt house like this. I'm in Cleveland, North Carolina at Carolina Malt House. So check out the new facility, find out what those 3 steps are for getting grain ready to be brewed, and also see the exciting things they'll be offering to brewers as well as home brewers. So now we've gone inside the malt house, and we're going to let these guys give you the whole story.
I'm Aaron Goss, and this is Steve Balk. And back in about mid-2015, we were tired of our office jobs. I was a civil litigator, and Steve was getting some marketing and distribution experience working at Cheerwine. And I think in the 80s, when you didn't like your office job anymore, you decided, oh, I'm going to go start a band. And maybe these days it's a brewery. So we actually put together a brewery business plan. And in the course of doing that, we realized there were already 120 breweries in the state making amazing beers. Today there are 260. We thought maybe instead of competing, maybe we should try to help them out. So this is Carolina Malt House. We're almost done with construction. All of our barley so far has come from within 30 miles of this location right here. We're right in the middle of North Carolina's barley belt. Beautiful barley so far. It's going to be beautiful malt. Let's start the tour. So yeah, this is a standard grain testing sample divider. Barley goes in top. And what you're supposed to get out of that is 2 representative barley samples. This is the officially approved, it looks like something from a distillery, but standard grain grading sample divider. And all of this in here is grain grading test equipment, so various screens for splitting the sample, measuring out thins, figuring out your clump percentage, finding skin and broken kernels. Perler for taking the hull off of each barley kernel. That's used for checking for heat and frost damage. Dickie John moisture tester, test weight analyzer, slushy machine, purely for the drivers. We're getting that working for this year. Unfortunately, last year's drivers didn't get to benefit, but this year we'll have it up and running. This is our sampling probe. So when trucks pull onto the truck scale, we can get up on the deck out there and use the probe, stick it down in the truck, open it, let grain flow in, close it, pull the sample out, and then we can dump it and perform all our tests. So these are our truck scales, standard truck scales, and our sampling platform. Setting the height of that sampling platform was actually a little bit of a challenge. We get a huge variety of trucks through here. Dump trucks, standard grain hopper trucks, tall hopper trucks. So yeah, figuring out that height was a little bit of a challenge, but it works great. Truck pulls in, we get a starting weight. We have somebody waiting up there with the sampling probe, and they can stick it into the truck. We usually take about 7 different sample points and then grade the barley. So this is where the grain is put into storage. So after check-in, after we do all our testing, which takes about 15 minutes, we'll either give the truck the okay or not to come down and dump barley. So what we have is a trough, so the truck can pull over the trough. Most trucks have a gate on the bottom that we can open up, and then barley just starts dumping into the trough, and then this is a chain conveyor to take barley up, around, and then we can select which of our bins we want to put it into. We can, you know, segregate it any way we want, quality, 2-row, 6-row, things like that. And yeah, so this is how we load up barley. We run 6,000 bushels an hour, so we can do you know, 5 or 6 trucks an hour, which is really handy when, like this year, we took in 90 truckloads. So this is our kilning fan, 125 horsepower fan. During the kilning process, we have to evaporate all of the moisture out of the green malt, like the malt that's in progress. And so if we're doing like a 20 nominal ton batch size, well, we might have 12 to 14 tons of water that all needs to be evaporated out in the space of about 12 hours. So fan plus heat equals evaporation, and so we have a lot of fan and a lot of heat. So this is our barley screening machine. Up in the grading shack, I showed our different size screens for grading out different sizes of barley. This machine is that on a much bigger scale. It automatically filters out any thin, undersized kernels, and we actually have a 2-stage screening process. So this is the first stage, but then after this we actually do a density sort, which allows us to screen out any pre-germinated barley. So what we end up with, I mean, even if some lower quality barley slips through our grading process, we can clean it and end up with 100% germinating, top quality barley. So after grain cleaning, we're finally ready to start the malting process. So this is our steeping tank, and the boiling down the steeping process, you get the barley wet. So we pump the dry barley into the big tank here, and I would open the manhole and show you, but I'd get really wet. There's a sieve in the bottom of the steeping tank, so the barley is held above the sieve, and then we're able to submerge it in water. Do that 2 or 3 times over the course of the steeping process to raise the moisture level to a percentage that's determined by our head maltster, Steve Bout. And then, yeah, so after steeping, target moisture somewhere in the 40–45% range, and then it's ready to go over to germination. So this is kind of a top view of our steeping process. We're up here on our sampling deck looking down into the big tank. And like I say, the steeping process is pretty simple, get it wet. So right now we've submerged, still waiting for the results of a moisture test. We might get to show you a barley transfer, but yeah, this is steeping. This is our grain turning machine. Like I said, everything here is locally designed and locally fabricated. So this is probably the most technical piece out here. But the purpose of this machine is to move back and forth down the grain bed to keep everything stirred up during germination. So this is the phase that follows steeping. During germination, the endosperm of the barley kernels is breaking down from a firm, sort of a carbohydrate crystal into free starches. So I mean, this is really the meat of the malting process. This is what we're trying to achieve. Steeping is to get it wet so that we can germinate. And so the purpose is to allow germination to advance just far enough that we have those free starches that the brewer can then break down into sugars during the mashing phase. So during germination, each barley kernel will grow little rootlets, and if we don't stir, those rootlets can become tangled up, and you can end up with, I don't know, some maltsters call it a beaver pelt, but it's a bunch of barley kernels where the rootlets have all grown in together, and it's a mess. It doesn't make good malt, and it blocks airflow, just all kinds of problems with that. So got to keep it stirred. Some malting operations use a rake. but I'm not strong enough to drag a rake through a 5-foot deep bed of wet barley, so we designed a machine to do it. So after germination, like I mentioned, the purpose of germination is to break down that sort of carbohydrate crystal into free starches. So we monitor the germination process carefully to find out when it's at exactly the right point that we want it. And when the barley has germinated to just the right point, then we begin kilning, which is, the purpose of kilning is kind of twofold. One, it adds a little bit of flavor. Like if you have a toasty beer, like a brown, really almost all beers have a little bit of a toastedness to them. And a lot of that can be imparted during kilning. But then the other purpose is to just pull moisture out of the grain to halt that germination process so that the starches are preserved for the brewery. And then, like I said, the first step that they do is called the mash, where they further break down those starches into sugars, which yeast can eat, which makes alcohol and carbon dioxide, which are two of the things that make beer wonderful. There are lots of different ways to do a malting operation, but the way we've set ours up is we're able to germinate and kiln in the same box. We like that for mold control. Germination is a very wet, cool process, and mold likes wet and cold. So by kilning in the same box, obviously we're still going to go through a whole bunch of cleaning, but it'll sort of help with mold control. But this is our air intake to let in all those CFMs of air that I mentioned earlier to dry out 20 tons of barley over the course of one day. Germination and kilning in the same box, we like that solution for what we want to do out here. And everything in here is designed to go up over 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll even be able to do light toasting in our germination box too. So we like the GKV setup, and that's part of how we achieved it. One question, obviously, is how do you get all the barley out? And in our case, there are lots of solutions to this problem, but what we decided to do was drop the whole floor. So we have hinge points over on this side, and we can use these hydraulic cylinders to drop the whole floor on its hinges, which will cause all the barley to fall out into our trough, and then we can convey all the barley out and bag it up and hopefully sell it. So finished malt is conveyed into our holding bin out front, and then when we're ready for bagging, we reconvey it indoors into our surge tank up top. And then we have a 2-stage malt cleaning process. We run it through a debearder and a sifter. The debearder knocks off that little rootlet that I mentioned forms during germination, and then the sifter cleans that rootlet out. And so what we're left with is just nice, almost sort of polished looking malt. And then we can bag it. So this is our bagging bin with a scale on it, so we can pull the lever, weigh out 50 pounds at a time, and then bag 50-pound bags, run them down the scale and out the door. Of course, we can also do bulk bags, and we prefer those. It's a whole lot less work for us. But yeah, cleaning and bagging. Thanks for taking the tour of Carolina Malt. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about where beer's key ingredient, malt, comes from. Be sure to ask your local brewer where their ingredients come from, and look for beers made with Carolina Malt in the coming months.